What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. Today we're going to be looking at NXT UK, the 2-hour show from this past Wednesday, the 28th of November. We're also going to be looking at the most recent episode of NXT, this week not from Full Sail, but also from Wednesday the 28th on the WWE Network. A lot of newsworthy stuff to talk about. We'll touch on one or two of those things at the end of the towards the end of the episode. But let's go straight into it. NXT UK from this past Wednesday, the 28th of November. Another 2-hour episode. I think they're planning to catch up with themselves until they get to NXT TakeOver Blackpool, which I'll talk more about later. But of course, remember they started taping the NXT UK shows back in July. I think they did July in Cambridge, August in Birmingham, September in Plymouth. I think they've recently done some in, Liverpool. I could be missing out one slot there. But I think they were hoping to get a TV deal or maybe start showing them on the network much sooner than they did. That didn't happen, so hence why you're getting 2 hours of NXT UK every single week. I'm sure when they finally caught up with all the storylines ahead of the Blackpool TakeOver show in January, then it will probably be going to back to hourly slots, which I think is probably better for this type of show, to be honest with you. The action is always great, the storyline's always good, really getting into the characters now. It's a really fun, enjoyable show, but once you've seen the first hour, the second hour, yeah, it's got some good action, but can be a little bit of a drag. Not quite as bad as the 3-hour Monday Night Raw, but yes, there we go. So this week's episode starts with a shot of the crowd as we look ahead to a couple of big matches in the next 2 hours. With the final of the NXT UK Women's Title Tournament still to come a little later on. I think that's going to be in the second hour of the show. We'll review that when we get to it. However, the main event of this first hour is going to be an epic battle between WWE UK Champion Pete Dunne versus Jordan Devlin for the UK Championship. First up, though, we see Xia Brookside and Millie McKenzie versus Charlie Morgan and Killer Kelly. Now, some of you might be familiar with Charlie Morgan, Killer Kelly, from the Royal Albert Hall shows that they did in June. I'm pretty sure that Charlie Morgan, Killer Kelly was there. Xia Brookside, we first noticed in the first round of the Mae Young Classic when she went out in the first round to Io Shirai. Millie McKenzie was seen quite a bit from, certainly, in NXT UK. So we see the return of Xia Brookside, who we first saw in the first round of the NXT Women's Championship title tournament last week, where she was knocked out by Rhea Ripley. Millie McKenzie will be her tag team partner for tonight, and Millie is someone I've spoken a lot about on this podcast, having reviewed her matches in progress and NXT UK recently. I'm a big fan of this very accomplished wrestler from Coventry. Yes, just remember she is only 18 years old and she's already signed a deal with the WWF to be part of the NXT UK brand. Their opponents are Charlie Morgan and Killer Kelly, and some of you may remember seeing both of these NXT UK stars at the Royal Albert Hall, as I just mentioned, in June, and more recently we've seen Killer Kelly in the Mae Young Classic. And of course the NXT TV shows over recent weeks. Morgan showing a lot of agility in the early going to counter a hold of Brookside before McKenzie gets tagged in to clamp on a version of the Fujiwara armbar onto Killer Kelly. Kelly is able to counter an attempted suplex attempt from McKenzie before laying in the stomps and punches before making a quick comeback, hitting a strong German suplex on Kelly, allowing her to make the tag to Xia Brookside. Once Brookside is in, she's able to hit a quick face buster, followed by a chin buster and a head scissors and double knees in the corner. The end came when Xia Brookside was about to go to the top turnbuckle, only to be distracted by Killer Kelly on the outside, allowing Morgan to drive Xia into the ring post. but as the ref was tending to Killer Kelly on the outside, Millie McKenzie snuck into the ring to hit a spear on Morgan while the referee's back was turned, before Xia Brookside was able to regain her composure and cradle Charlie Morgan for the 1-2-3 and the win for her team. So some slightly underhanded tactics there by the babyface team, but it all worked in the end. So a fast-paced and exciting match that went just over 4 minutes, and a good win for the babyface duo of Millie McKenzie and Xia Brookside. Next we see the WWE UK champion Pete Dunne getting ready for his match tonight. However, we'll be seeing Eddie Dennis versus Ashton Smith in a match that has been building for a few weeks now, with various backstage interviews and promos between the two. Now this should be, I believe, the toughest bit of competition for Eddie Dennis since he arrived in NXT UK. So we go to the match. Eddie Dennis is met with boos as he enters the ring with a menacing and dangerous look on his face. Smith is able to knock Dennis to the outside after a drop kick and a leg lariat before going for a dive, which the rangy Welshman is fully prepared for as he catches Smith in midair before slamming him onto the edge of the ring apron, demonstrating his great strength in the process. So really painful looking move there onto Smith. Dennis nails Smith with a forearm and a powerful Irish whip into the opposite corner before nailing him with a judo throw for only a 1 count. The match has settled down to a slow pace, which is right up Eddie Dennis' street, but Smith is able to make a comeback with a springboard dropkick, taking Dennis to the outside before hitting a running plancher over the top rope, this time executing it perfectly. Once back in the ring, Smith is able to hit a stunning top rope leg lariat onto Dennis for a very close near fall. Smith hits a drop kick on Dennis, who is sitting on the top rope at the time, but Dennis isn't fazed by this offense as he recovers to hit his razor's edge like buckle bomb into the corner before finishing Smith off with his next stop driver for the win. And another impressive victory for the pride of Wales, Eddie Dennis. Dennis remains undefeated on the NXT UK brand, although this was his toughest encounter so far. As mentioned on a previous episode, I do rate Eddie Dennis an awful lot and could easily see him as a contender to the UK Championship at some point in the near future. The next question is, who will be next in store for the Pride of Wales? I'm sure it will be a much bigger opponent. It could be in the future for Mr. Dennis. We then see footage from last week's episode where Joseph Connors attacked his then tag team partner Saxton Huxley after their pinfall loss to Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews. That's leading us to our next match of the night. Saxton Huxley versus Joseph Connors. So in my opinion, Joseph Connors has a good look and is a great wrestler. However, I feel that there needs to be a bit more character development to build Connors into a more talked about heel that could be taken seriously in the future. There's plenty of stiff punches from Huxley in the early going, but Connors regains control with an almighty clothesline and stomps of his own to slow the pace down, more to suit his style. Connors dominates Huxley in the corner with some stiff elbows. Huxley makes a comeback with a strong clothesline, but gets caught on the top rope, allowing Connors to hit a belly-to-back suplex, followed by a sit-out spinebuster for a strong 2 counts. At the end of the match comes when Joseph Connors hits his patented final statement facebuster finisher for the pinfall victory and another convincing win. This is the most notable match of Joseph Connors since he entered NXT UK, with a bright future in store for the man from Nottingham. We then get a video package highlighting Toni Storm and her career so far in NXT UK, as she gets ready for her match against Rhea Ripley in the final of the NXT UK Women's Championship tournament. I enjoyed this video package and felt that it did what it needed to do to help hype up the final of the tournament, but also to show a little bit more character from Toni Storm, which may have come across, she may have come across as a bit one-dimensional, certainly in my opinion, in the past. We need to see more of these types of videos to allow Storm to show her character and personality. She has the look, we know that she can wrestle. This could help to complete the final piece of the puzzle. We then briefly see Jordan Devlin getting ready for his match against UK champion Pete Dunne in his quest to rename the brand NXT Ireland, featuring the United Kingdom. This will take place next. We then see another video package featuring Rhea Ripley, who will face Toni Storm in the final of the NXT UK Championship tournament. Now, in my opinion, Ripley has definitely demonstrated her character and personality in recent months, especially with her newly found aggression in the Mae Young Classic this year. But Rhea has also shown her tough, hard-hitting wrestling style as well this year, and is fast becoming a total package in my opinion. And will be some tough competition for Toni Storm later on tonight. We then go to the main event of the first hour of tonight's NXT UK. Pete Dunne, the WWE United Kingdom champion, versus Jordan Devlin. Devlin is the clear heel here as he enters to loud boos from the audience here in Birmingham. And I just want to apologise if you can hear my dogs in the background, Luna and Teddy. You may have heard them in previous podcasts, to be honest with you. They are yappers, so I do apologise if you can hear them in the background. Dunne enters to a crazy pop from his hometown fans here in Birmingham, and looks every bit a champion as he walks down the aisle to face the very impressive Jordan Devlin, who is having the best 12 months of his career. You may remember that Dunne last defended his championship a few weeks ago against Martin Stone, and that was the best NXT match so far. Sorry, Danny Burch, not Martin Stone. This could very easily top that match, and wouldn't surprise me if it did. The match really gets going after 2 minutes when Devlin cracks Dunne with a brutal forearm, sending Pete Dunne to the canvas. Devlin follows up with some hard punches, rocking the champion in the early stages of this match. Dunne is able to come back with a huge clothesline before applying some joint manipulation on Devlin's arm and fingers before laying in some boots. Devlin hits a backstabber in the corner before hitting a slam and a standing moonsault, but only for a 1 count. Pete Dunne strikes back with some offense of his own, including an Ep06 into an armbar, and this is on the 5-minute mark, which Devlin is able to counter into a roll-up for a 2 count. Devlin hits a face wash boots, nailing Dunne in the corner before hitting a stunning arm drag suplex for another 2 count. We've seen Devlin perform this move before. I don't know if there's a name for it. I'm sure there is. I need to do a bit more research on this move in particular because it is pretty outstanding. But basically, he's got his opponent by the hand, pulls his opponent into him, and then without hesitation, without flinching, no wasted time, pulls him into the most awesome kind of like back suplex. So a really good combo there. However, from this point, Dunne does regain control with some brutal stomps on Devlin's fingers. However, this was short-lived as Devlin hits a brilliant Spanish fly on Dunne, which is turned into a Koji clutch by the UK champion. So lots of back and forth action here. The match goes to the outside where Devlin hits the move of the night so far with a wicked Spanish fly from the ring steps to the outside, with both men landing heavily on the hard floor and appearing to injure Pete Dunne's back in the process. Both men make it into the ring just before the 10 count as the fans get to their feet in appreciation. Devlin hits an inverted Hurricane Rana from out of nowhere for another near fall as the fans chant, "This is awesome," and yes, it is. Dunne hits a bitter end after nailing Devlin in midair from an attempted moonsault, but Dunne is in pain with his injured back from the earlier Spanish fly on the outside, and is unable to cover as Devlin rolls out of the UK Champion's reach. The match continues as both men climb to the top rope. However, Devlin is able to hit, I think it's the 3rd Spanish fly of the match from the top turnbuckle to the canvas, but only for another 2 counts. The fans are really getting into this match and eating up every bit of action. The match ends when Devlin has Dunne on the mat and takes Pete Dunne's mouth guard out of his own mouth before hitting him with a super kick to the head. Devlin scales the top rope to attempt a moonsault, only to be caught on the landing by Dunne into like a triangle submission hold with everyone on their feet at this point. Devlin nearly gets to the bottom rope, but Pete Dunne rolls Devlin towards the centre of the ring, snaps his fingers sideways before turning Devlin's arm over, causing Mr. Devlin to tap out, not being able to take any more punishment from the joint manipulation. This was an awesome match between two of the best wrestlers in the world at the moment. The match went almost 15 minutes and the crowd ate up every moment. I'd easily give this match a 4-star. And it had a unique finish to the match, with Pete Dunne not winning by one of his usual finishing moves, which is something I always like to see when a match ends with something different to a wrestler's standard finisher that we've seen time and time again. Hour 2 starts with the hype for the final of the NXT UK Women's Championship tournament between Toni Storm and Rhea Ripley. That should be an awesome matchup. However, it looks like we've got a match between Joe Coffey, who is accompanied to the ring by his brother Mark Coffey, and Wolfgang. Now, Joe Coffey is meant to be facing Sid Scala. However, we haven't seen anything from Wolfgang and the Coffeys since their attack on Moustache Mountain a couple of weeks back. Sid Scala makes his way onto the stage in a business suit to announce that he has not been cleared to compete in the ring tonight. However, he introduced his replacement and the Coffey's new opponent, who will be Tyler Bate, one half of Moustache Mountain, who was involved in a bit of a beatdown both in the ring and backstage a couple of weeks ago on NXT TV. The match starts with huge lefts and rights between both wrestlers as the crowd starts big strong boy chants towards Tyler Bate. Bate nails Coffey with a dive to the outside followed by an uppercut, flooring Joe Coffey in the process. Joe Coffey's cohorts of Wolfgang and his brother Mark Coffey make their way to the ringside area to distract Bate, allowing Joe Coffey to attack the distracted former UK champion. I just want to explain that although Wolfgang and Mark Coffey came out on the stage when Joe Coffey made his entrance, Joe Coffey told them that he didn't need them and waved them back to the locker room. However, they came back to cause distraction here to Tyler Bate. Coffey launches Bate into the corner with a headbutt to the stomach before getting Bate into a butterfly big swing, followed by a butterfly suplex for the cover and a 2 count. Coffey is able to dominate the smaller Bates with his strength and power. The story of the match is that Bates has an injured back from the attack on the outside earlier. Bates is able to hit standing shooting star splash, but unable to capitalise. Mark Coffey gets up onto the ring apron to distract Bate, once again allowing Joe Coffey to hit a power slam for another 2 count. Then Trent Seven, Tyler Bates' Moustache Mountain tag team partner, comes out to the locker room to help even things up. Coffey attempts a top rope diving crossbody block, but Bate moves out of the way, with Coffey hitting nothing but canvas. Bate finally gets Coffey up for an aeroplane spin. A wheel kick was followed before Tyler Bate goes for his patented finish of the Tyler Driver 97, only for Mark Coffey and Wolfgang to get involved for the DQ finish as they beat down Bate and Trent Seven in the ring. That was until the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne's music started, and we see Pete Dunne sprinting down to the ring to save the day for his friends and British Strong Styles stablemates. This looks to be the start of a bit of rivalry between these two groups, and more from them to come, I'm sure. Next we get a match between Ligero and Dan Maloney. This match went about 6 minutes. Ligero hit the sliced bread on Maloney, as well as a somersault senton to the outside before hitting his finisher, a springboard DDT, for the easy win for Ligero. Ligero dominated the match with his speed and his experience, getting back to winning ways after his loss to Jordan Devlin a couple of weeks ago. Next up, we've got Kenny Williams and Amir Jordan versus the grizzled young veterans, as you know, a combination of James Drake and Zach Gibson. Both of these teams will no doubt be taking part in the tag title tournament that will be taking place on the future NXT UK TV tapings, possibly the tapings that took place this past weekend in Liverpool actually, and I expect to see Gibson and Drake to play a prominent role in that tournament. Kenny Williams and Amir Jordan are a fun, high-flying team. However, the more experienced team of Drake and Gibson disposed of their opponents following a very impressive assisted lung blower called the Ticket to Ride double team move on Williams for the win after about 10 minutes. Next up, we have Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley for the final of the NXT UK Women's Championship tournament. We're greeted by an appearance from the NXT UK General Manager Johnny Saint holding the NXT UK Women's Championship bout as he walks down to the ring. Rhea Ripley comes out first, looking imposing and full of attitude, followed by Toni Storm before the formal introductions are made. So is it just me, or does Toni Storm appear to come out to different music every time we see her in the WWE? I'm a big fan of both of these two wrestlers, and both deserve to be in this spot. Many hardcore wrestling fans may not be as high on Rhea Ripley as I am, because she is a product of the WWE Performance Center instead of being a product of the Indies. But since we first saw her in 2017 at the first Mae Young Classic, she has come on more than anyone, especially since her re-emergence this year at the 2018 Mae Young Classic, where she went on to the semi-finals only to lose to Io Shirai. Toni Storm has also had a great 12 to 18 months with a lengthy run as Progress Women's Champion. She won the Mae Young Classic this year, as well as becoming WXW Women's Champion in Germany a few weeks ago, and is one of the hottest commodities in pro wrestling at the moment. Storm starts with some early offense, hitting Ripley with a hip attack in one of the corners, as well as a dive onto Ripley on the outside of the ring. Storm misses another hip attack, landing heavily into the barricade on the outside. Ripley reverses an attempted Storm Zero on the ring apron into a back body drop, sending Storm onto the very edge of the ring apron, and she looks to be in a lot of pain as the referee checks on her. Storm just makes it back into the ring before the 10 count, but she does look to be in trouble following that backdrop onto the ring apron. So Ripley lays in a beating with punches and an Irish whip into the corner, adding insult to injury. Ripley puts Storm into her modified Texas Cloverleaf, which we have seen in the last few weeks against Xia Brookside and Dakota Kai. But with Storm's injured lower back, this could be devastating. Storm is able to escape to hit two snap German suplexes, followed by a headbutt and another bridging suplex for a 2 count. Storm is able to hit a Shining Wizard, followed by 2 hipper counts in the corner for another 2 counts. Storm lines Ripley up for her Storm Zero finisher, but Storm's back gives up on her, allowing Ripley to hit her Riptide finisher for the 1, 2, 3, and she is the first ever NXT UK Women's Champion. She is presented with a belt from Triple H and Johnny Saint as the rest of the locker room empty out onto the stage to applaud the new champion Rhea Ripley. The match looked great from the beginning to end, and all credit to both wrestlers in this match. Toni Storm sold the backdrop on the ring apron, probably because that move looked like it really hurt. As mentioned before, I think Rhea Ripley is the real deal. Is one of the most improved performers in WWE in the last 12 months, and this is obviously why WWE and in particular Triple H are showing a lot of faith in her. Rhea is obviously put in a lot of training and a lot of effort at the Performance Center, and all of her hard work has paid off. Her character, her mannerisms, her moves, her power in the ring makes her very nearly the complete package in my opinion, and with her being only 22 years of age, she should have a very bright future ahead of her and career with WWE. As for Toni Storm, we know that she is excellent in just about every aspect of her game, and she will no doubt have an even brighter future ahead of her with NXT UK and on the main roster in the not too distant future. We know that the company sees a lot in Toni Storm, especially with her recent win at the Mae Young Classic. We will no doubt see these two go at it again, and I for one will not be disappointed to see their matches. I'm going to give this one 3 3/4 stars out of 5, so nearly a 4-star match. I thought it was excellent. a lot of psychology, a lot of really good moves, a lot of really strong selling. Loved this match, really, really good. So this was an excellent match, and overall, another couple of really great hours of NXT UK wrestling action, with the matches between Pete Dunne and Jordan Devlin for the UK title, and this final that we've just witnessed, the NXT UK Women's Championship tournament, being the highlights for me. A couple of really good matches there. So we move on to NXT, not from Full Sail. This is the Wednesday the 28th of November edition, shown directly after the NXT UK 2 hours. So tonight's show starts with Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan versus the Mighty, Shane Thorne and Miller. Can't remember Miller's first name. I'm sure it'll come to me a bit later. So we haven't seen much from Burch and Lorcan since their match with the Undisputed Era at their 5-star takeover match a few months ago for the NXT tag titles. The match picks up when Burch and Lorcan put submission holds on both Thorne and Miller in the centre of the ring, only for both members of the Mighty to grab hold of the ropes for the break. The Mighty have a more aggressive heel attitude about them nowadays, with some crisp double team moves on Lorcan, until Danny Burch is tagged in with a blistering attack on both members of the Mighty. Shane Thorne hits the move of the night so far, flooring Lorcan in the process with a Mighty dropkick, no pun intended there. That was until Oney Lorcan got the fans on their feet with a superb cannonball sent on over the top rope onto both Thorne and Miller. For an NXT TV match, this is red hot. The end comes when the Mighty set to put Lorcan away with their double team finisher, until Danny Burch tackles both members of the Mighty, allowing Lorcan to roll up Miller for the win. A really fun match, however, as Burch and Lorcan celebrate their win, the Mighty attack the victors from behind with kicks and punches, possibly setting up a bit of a feud between those two teams, and some more matches to come, I'm sure. This feud between Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch versus the Mighty, I'm sure will be a lot more entertaining than the feud that the Mighty have just come off, which was against the Street Profits, who, to give them credit, are the new Evolve Tag Team Champions. In my opinion, the Mighty came out of the match looking much more legit as heels, and a team that we can take more seriously within the tag team division in the future. Next, we see action from last month, where all 4 members of the Undisputed Era put EC3 out of action. However, EC3 will be back in action tonight against Marcel Bartel. We then get a backstage interview with Kairi Sane, with her friend Io Shirai and Dakota Kai, to explain their frustration with Shayna Baszler and the other members of the Horsewomen following the women's title match at TakeOver a couple of weeks back. Then we get the return of EC3 after being out of action following that attack from the Undisputed Era. So EC3 versus Marcel Bartel. So Marcel Bartel, you may be familiar with. He was a bit of a mainstay with WXW in Germany, formerly known as Axel Dieter Jr. So EC3 enters first, followed by Marcel Bartel, who enters to the same music as his former ring camp stablemate Walter, who, as you may be aware, this week signed with the WWE, possibly joining NXT or NXT UK in the new year. Now, I saw Marcel Bartel wrestle at WrestleMania Access this past April in New Orleans, when he went up against Austin Theory for the WWN Championship on the morning of WrestleMania. And he was trying to get his character over with some mic work before the match with Theory, and gave us an entertaining match. However, tonight, Bartel is definitely the least known of the two wrestlers in the ring. Bartel did hit a sweet Sheamus-like white noise slam for a near fall in the early going. The match ends when EC3 hits Bartel with his 1% finisher for the 1-2-3, getting EC3 back into winning ways. However, I was impressed with the former Axel Dieter Jr., formerly of the WXW brand in Germany. EC3 gets on the mic to address Undisputed Era, and in particular Bobby Fish, stating that he is coming for his head, his leg, and everything in between. We then get a vignette from Dijakovic, formerly known as Donovan Dijak, a former Ring of Honor champion, who we have seen previously on NXT TV in mostly losing efforts. However, it looks like they have plans ahead for this very tall, powerful and talented athlete in the coming weeks on NXT. Then we see Mia Yim versus Vanessa Bourne. Mia Yim wins the match very easily after only 5 minutes. Then we get a backstage promo from Tommaso Ciampa as he explains that when he returns to NXT next week, he wants everyone in the NXT locker room to follow his lead. Then we get the main event of this hour of NXT, pitting Lars Sullivan versus Keith Lee. So these two had a bit of an exchange on the pre-show at NXT a couple of weeks ago. NXT War Games, that is. Keith Lee makes his way to the ring to a good reception from the fans in attendance, chanting their support for the Limitless One. Lars Sullivan will soon be heading to the main roster, and this could be one of his last matches before heading to either Raw or SmackDown. Now this should be a hard-hitting match between two big, powerful men, both close to or over 300 pounds. The match starts with a bit of a shoving match, but Sullivan is able to get the better of Lee in the early stages. He's also able to catch Lee in mid-air when Lee was trying an attempted leapfrog over Sullivan, and Sullivan caught him. Lee was able to hit a crossbody block, which Sullivan was able to kick out of after just one count. Lee attempted a slingshot shoulder block on Sullivan, only for Sullivan to hit Lee with a huge boot to the chest, flooring Lee in the process. Sullivan hoists Lee into the air with a huge slam, followed by a sliding basement clothesline and an attempted diving headbutt from the second turnbuckle, but only for a 2 count. Lee is able to connect with his second go at the slingshot crossbody for a 2 count of his own. Lee hits one of his patented double hand chops, followed by a pounce knocking Sullivan out of the ring, allowing Lee to hit the move of the night with an awesome slingshot spinning plancher, only resulting in a 2 count when he got Sullivan back in the ring. Lee attempts a top rope moonsault, only for Sullivan to avoid, allowing Lars to nail Keith Lee with his freak accident finisher for the 3 count and the win between these two huge individuals in what was an excellent match. Lars Sullivan went over in this match, making him look strong ahead of his main roster debut. However, Keith Lee looked very impressive in this match and pulled out some great moves, including some high-flying moves that you wouldn't expect to see from a man of his size. So a solid 3 stars I'm going to give to this match out of 5 between Keith Lee and Lars Sullivan. You should go out of your way to watch it. And in case you are in any way sceptical about the ability of these two big men, in particular the very talented Limitless Keith Lee, catch it on the WWE Network. Definitely the match of the night, in my opinion. So it's my understanding that this week's NXT show was filmed prior to NXT TakeOver War Games a couple of Saturdays ago, hence not being in front of the usual Full Sail crowd. However, the latest set of NXT take-ins took place this week, pretty much setting up the matches as we head into NXT TakeOver Phoenix in Arizona, one day before next year's Royal Rumble in Phoenix. We'll get the first week's episode from that round of tapings on Wednesday coming. So, a few bits of news. As many of you may be aware, it was announced at the NXT UK tapings in Liverpool last Saturday night that in January the 12th, as a matter of fact, at the Empress Ballroom in Blackpool, NXT UK will have their very first takeover show. So you're obviously familiar with the quarterly shows that the American NXT brand have in America. They'll be doing a takeover special for the NXT UK brand from Blackpool. So I think the latest set of tapings are going to lead us towards that card. I am aware of some of the matches. I'm not going to spoil it for you here, otherwise you won't be listening to me every week to catch up with what the latest happenings on NXT TV. Needless to say, it looks like a stacked card and should be fantastic. Coincidentally, I did try to get tickets for this show. I'd kind of arranged everything from hotel to transport up there to see the NXT TakeOver Blackpool show on Saturday the 12th of January. Got online, got my credit card ready at 10 o'clock on the dot. Tried to buy a ticket, one single ticket from the first tier price group, the second tier price group, and third tier price group, and every attempt, it came up with tickets not available. So within 3 minutes, the Empress Ballroom had sold out for NXT UK Takeover Blackpool. So I just have to be satisfied with watching it on the WWE network. But that's kind of the big news coming out of the Liverpool tapings anyway. I think that the biggest news regarding the NXT UK brand this week is that there's been some development regarding a lot of the talents' contracts. I know that earlier on in the summer, I think it was around about June time, Travis Banks got injured at an independent show about a week before the next set of NXT UK tapings, which I think was the first set of tapings, which were taking place in Cambridge in July. And he wasn't able to compete, wasn't able to show up, had to have surgery. I don't think he's made a return yet. I know that he's scheduled to make a return for Progress fairly soon. But we haven't seen him in action on NXT UK since June, certainly since the Royal Albert Hall shows. And it was shortly after this that WWE announced to its talent that they were unable to compete for any other group less than a week before an NXT UK show or tapings. So they were still, fairly flexible in terms of who the talent could wrestle for. I think when a lot of the WWE or the NXT UK talent signed their contracts in either late 2016 or early 2017, just before the UK Championship tournament in Blackpool, I think that they were given a fair bit of flexibility on that they could wrestle for other organisations around the UK. They could still honour independent dates. They couldn't wrestle on any independent shows which were live stream and pay-per-views, but they could if it was recorded, is my understanding. But then since the injury from Travis Banks, I know that there was a new edict that went out that any of the UK talent couldn't wrestle on any independent shows 1 week ahead of any NXT tapings to avoid any talent being missing from the tapings due to injury. Anyway, since then, there's been further changes with a fair portion of the NXT UK talent having amendments to their contracts where they will be kind of more exclusive to WWE and the NXT UK brand. They will no longer be able to work as many independent dates as they were before. They will only be able to work with organisations outside of the WWE or NXT UK brand where WWE have working agreements with. The organisations off the top of my head that talent will still be able to work with are OTT in Ireland, Progress, WXW in Germany, and ICW in Scotland. So those are the four brands that I'm certainly aware of where WWE have a working agreement with, have a working relationship with, that the talent could still perform with. I think there's still the rule that they can't perform with any of those wrestling companies where they're live streaming. And I believe if it's recorded to be shown at a later date, that's fine. I think there's added restrictions on not being able to wrestle talent from competing organisations such as Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, etc. So even if they were to attend or be on the card for Progress or OTT, they wouldn't be able to wrestle any talent from a competing organisation within against the WWE. But I also believe, and this has come out over the last 24 hours, that WWE have the option to completely buy out one of these partner companies that they have a relationship with. As I said, WXW, OTT, ICW, and Progress. But not only buy them out, but they could potentially, if they so wish, could close them down. So I'm assuming they could only close them down if and when they they decide to purchase these promotions that they have a working relationship with. I'm hoping that never happens because there's a lot of criticism out there towards WWE, towards Vince McMahon, Triple H, that what they're doing to the UK independent scene is kind of what they're doing to the scene back in the 80s across America, where they bought out and closed down a lot of the territory wrestling, a lot of the organisations, AWA being one of them, Stampede and many others. I know Vince McMahon already sees the UK as one of his territories, and now that he has working relationships or closer working relationships with OTT, ICW, WXW and Progress, I'm sure he's using them as a bit of a feeder system, bit of a performance centre outside of America to not only train talents, keep talent busy, but also to have that feeding ground for fresh young talent coming through. There could potentially be some negatives to this in terms of the worst case scenario, but I think this is the way the WWE has always operated. This is the way that wrestling has been, certainly in North America for a long time, where if you get into bed with WWE, you do pretty much have to answer to them and play by their rules. On the flip side, you have to only look at NXT UK and the brand, and the amount of publicity and exposure that the talent and the brand are getting around the world that they wouldn't have got otherwise necessarily. It has given a lot of the NXT UK talent that do work within the NXT UK contracts to have great exposure, where they're potentially going to earn a lot more money, not only working for WWE, but when they do work independent dates for the four companies that I've already mentioned, I'm sure they will command a higher price. And if and when they leave NXT UK or the WWE in the future, they'll be able to command a higher price on the indie circuit. But another way of looking at it is that potentially, it does offer a lot more opportunity to younger talent coming through the ranks, because if the NXT UK talent cannot compete with other independent organisations outside of the four that I've mentioned, it does give the opportunity to younger talent to come through and to make a name for themselves in them organisations, and possibly getting noticed by Progress, ICW, OTT, where they might be able to appear on them shows and then get noticed even more by WWE. So there are, I think, although it tightens the net a little bit on those companies and the talent, I have to say that's the way the WWE have always operated, so I'm not surprised that that's happened the way it's happened. But at the same time, I think with the added exposure on UK wrestling and UK talent, it does give a bigger platform for any youngsters looking to make their name or to start their path on the professional wrestling ladder. So the final bit of news is that Walter, the OTT, Progress and WXW champion, will be joining the WWE in the new year. By all accounts, he has signed a contract with the WWE. My gut instinct tells me that he will be signing to wrestle with the NXT UK brand, and I think he will be showing up in the crowd or maybe something to do with the main event at the NXT UK Takeover show in Blackpool in January. Walter, he's probably the hottest commodity on the independent scene in the world at the moment. I did listen to a podcast where he was on the Steve Austin show a few weeks ago, where he said that he wants to continue working in Europe. He doesn't really have much of a desire to work in the States, which kind of made us think, well, maybe he's not interested in signing with the WWE or working for NXT in America. But now that the NXT UK brand seems to be catching some fire, maybe Walter would be a really good name to add to that roster. However, I think that Walter could be a good addition to any of the brands underneath the WWE umbrella. And if you don't know too much about Walter, look him up. I've recommended before signing up to Demand Progress through the Progress website. He is the current Progress World Champion, and his matches against Tyler Bate at Wembley, recent matches against Mark Haskins or Zack Sabre Jr. are just off the charts. He's a very realistic, very hard-hitting wrestler. And yeah, do a bit of research before you see him pop up on the WWE Network and go out and catch some Walter matches. As I mentioned, in WXW, he was stablemates with Axel Dieter Jr. We now know him as Marcel Bartel on the NXT brand, and Tim Thatcher, all part of Ring Camp. And I think he's going to be a big star in more ways than one. So that's all from this week's episode of Wrestling with Johners. Later this week, I will be doing a full review of Progress Wrestling's latest chapter, Chapter 78, entitled 24-Hour Progress People. I was meaning to get it out last week, but work commitments meant that I've not had a chance to record that episode yet. This particular show, Chapter 78, does include a Progress World Championship match between Walter, who I've just spoke about, versus Mark Haskins, which should be another hard-hitting bouter. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and if you have any questions or want to send anything to our mailbag, you can simply send an email to wrestlingwithjohners@gmail.com. Give us your feedback about the show. Please get in touch. You can also visit my Twitter page @withjohners_WWJ, or visit my YouTube page. Just search Johners Wrestling to see all of my videos from my 5 days out in New Orleans at WrestleMania 34. And also previous episodes of this podcast. I'll be back next week for another episode of Wrestling with Johners, talking about everything NXT UK, NXT, and everything else in between. So take care, and see you all soon.